was stronger than you thought.
All right, I'm so excited. Got it. We are live. I'm so excited. Welcome to simplywoman.tv. My name is Crystal Andrus Morissette, and I'm your host today. And over the next 30 minutes, we're talking about women, weight, body image, the BS of the beauty industry. We're also going to talk about Canadian TV royalty, Lisa LaFlamme, and her recent firing from CTV, or if it was a firing, or was it because she let her hair go gray, or what was the deal? And I've invited Jennifer Ettinger, my friend from way back. She's a PR social media influencer. She's worked, as a matter of fact, with CTV and all the red carpet events from the Oscars to the Grammys. She actually was telling me all the different things she's done. And I said, oh my gosh, we have got to have this conversation because this is a big topic and she's here to help us unpack this for you, and you want to stick around. We'd also love for you to join the conversation. If you're here live with us on Facebook, share your name, where you're from in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions along the way or share your thoughts. Now, let me properly introduce Jennifer Ettinger. She's worked with women across the globe to embrace self-acceptance and body image. She's built a brand around body confidence on television. Like I said, she has been on, I don't know, she's going to tell us. I said, why don't you have all this in your bio? Because she's been everywhere on television as a guest expert, as a host, as an interviewer, a magazine contributor. She has her best-selling book, Find Your Inner Goddess. She's earned her stripes, though, on the subject of self-love and body confidence. She attended the prestigious Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, and she had that J-Lo body. I remember, I know it. Before J-Lo was coveted and that body was coveted. And she said, I felt really tremendous insecurities around women as a woman. I was made fun of and jeered by strangers because of her curves. And now everybody wants those curves. Jennifer also attempted to deal with a lot of stressors in her life, like many of us women have, especially women who are in the media, who are in the public eye. At one point, she even became bedridden for a year. We're going to talk about that and what she thinks it was connected to. She's also turned to extreme dieting, which many of us have, diet pills, laxatives, all the BS, all the bullshit. The great news is she's here. She's reclaimed her life. She's learned about self-love from the inside out. And there's no one else that I'd rather to be here with us today than Jennifer. How are you, Jennifer?
Well, Crystal, sending you a big hug. It is
Jennifer.
so wonderful to be with you today. Thank you for having me. I was thinking our relationship, our friendship goes 20 plus years. It goes way back. So this is lovely to be back into your space. So thank you.
It is, Jennifer. I didn't even bring this up, but I think the last time we saw each other was at my 40th birthday.
Yes.
That my husband decided to throw. And I think Julia was like a week out of the hospital. She'd been so sick at Sick Kids. I can't even believe I'm bringing this up, but I remember probably 15 minutes before that party that he threw me, I think I was in my bedroom crying because I hated the way I looked. I felt like I looked fat. I didn't want to go to the party. I wasn't in a good place. Isn't that so sad to think that's the stuff that I was worried about on my 40th? Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but the pressures that we put on ourselves to look good.
Absolutely. And even though you say it's not neither here or there,
It's everywhere.
Yes, go through that. So many of us, that holds us back. It chains us back from actually being freed to be the woman that we're designed to be.
Yes, yes, yes. So Jennifer, before we get into the CTV Lisa LaFlamme, because I want your thoughts on that. I know you've worked with them. I also know that when I wrote you and said, what do you think Lisa LaFlamme is at the old boys club? You shared with me, Crystal, there's a lot more internalized misogyny going on in there than the old boys club. And I said, oh my God, you got to tell me all the stories. Yes. But before we do, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your journey and how you got to this place now of self-acceptance.
So I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and my career started because I was bedridden. I was bedridden with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. I was a go-getter in New York City prior to that, wound up getting my dream job in Toronto. I found an amazing Canadian that I fell in love with.
Yes.
But my dream job was not the dream job. It turned out to be The Devil's Wears Prada. I could have my own movie and really became very ill. I would gag Crystal like 60 times a day. I'm in this beautiful brownstone building in Yorkville. and I would go in the hallway and just gag from the stress, not the job, but how I was treated by another woman.
So wait a second, this goes way back 20 years ago.
Yes. So that was the impetus for me to become so sick. It was building up. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I finally was bedridden for about a year of my life. And it was at that time I started getting introduced to you as well, and became a certified personal trainer, and was working on self-awareness, holistic modalities, and made a combination of my undergrad in fashion styling and created Fit Your Style. So Fit Your Style is FIT in New York City. It's fitness. Style is my undergrad. So it's very personal how I created Fit Your Style to help women really embrace their bodies and share my story of darkness, of challenges, to help other women.
Yeah. And your Fit Your Style, interesting that we go back to that, because I teach women these emotional parts, these emotional archetypes that we have, whether it's the perfection. I mean, I didn't come up with that perfectionist archetype, but all these different archetypes. And when some of them are, and you created a different type of sort of archetypal program for women, which was like, let's figure out your style. Let's figure out your body type. Let's figure out. So it's again, sort of working with parts and finding that wholeness and self-acceptance.
Absolutely. I think that education is freedom, quite honestly. So let's learn how to understand or embrace our body shapes. What can we change? What can't we change? If we can't change it, what emotional work do we need to do around, the size of the European nose, right? Like, I choose not to do plastic surgery. For the longest time, my nose was like in my way, Crystal, of feeling beautiful, right?
Yeah, right.
So I took my own journey and broke it down into how do they feel about their body shapes, their face shape, and let's learn how to work through and break through so we can become the goddesses we're meant to be.
Yeah.
And you played a huge part of that. You have been a mentor prior to becoming a friend, and your first book I share with everyone to this day. It is the most iconic book on health and wellness. I just can't say enough about it.
Thank you. That's Simply Woman. I should have it.
Yes, Simply
I should
Woman.
have it here in front of me. Where is that? I have a desk right now. That's my next job, to clear my desk, because I probably have 50 something books on my desk. I don't even have my own. It's somewhere. Anyway, Simply Woman. And that's the basis of this show now. Simply Woman was my very first book. And I went on to do 5 more, 3 with Hay House and Random House. And but we've stayed in touch with each other always over the years. So it's so great to know that I was an influence on your life. How incredible. So Jennifer, then you went to Fashion Institute.
Yes.
You wrote a book on how to get comfortable with your body type and how to be your best self. And then tell me how you even got yourself onto like CTV. Tell me the story about how did you sell yourself? Because really that's what we're all doing almost every day of our lives, is we're having to show up and sell ourselves in some way to get the job, get the date, get the whatever it is, right? So how did that come about?
I like to say that one Facebook post changed my life. One tweet changed my career. So a quick summation is I was involved in a social media community on Facebook, happened to be with the Ricky Lake show. Ricky Lake was very innovative in terms of looking at Facebook community for contributors. And I happened to be a part of that in Toronto. I was going to California and I posted to the cool kids in LA, who do I want to meet? Because I thought they were the coolest people ever. And they said, come meet us. So I wound up on the tour of Insider Television, which was the sister show to Entertainment Tonight. And they're asking me all these questions, Crystal, about my book and about myself. And like, oh, they're so nice, right? I thought I'm just getting this tour and I'm sitting in the host chair. And at the end of the tour, they said, we want you back tomorrow morning. We want you to be on our show as a contributor. And long story short, we made it happen. It was my first time on US national television. And about 4 weeks later, they said, we want you to join something called the Twitterati, which was a collective group of people who had their own brands, successful quote unquote brands. And they wanted us to come together and cover red carpet events. But the beautiful thing was through our lens and our perspective. So I wasn't asking what dress you were wearing. I was asking Patricia Arquette, what's your style persona and a hashtag? So I tied it all back to my brand.
Wow.
From there, after years of Vanity Fair Social Club, Access Hollywood, ET, Insider, I kept seeing everyone from CTV on the plane for years. And I said,
so you were literally,
yes.
you were literally on a plane, and you would see people on the same plane flying to LA on the same plane.
Yes.
So you're on the plane and you decide.
I finally decide I'm standing the line for the loo, Crystal, and the sweet woman from CTV, I could tell just by her demeanor, who I would see multiple times in the past, was standing in front of me. And I said, I'm sorry, but I have to ask, because I've seen you for years. You're with CTV or eTalk? Yes. And she shared her name. And she's like, who are you? Where do you live? And I said, I work as a social media correspondent. I support channels in LA. Where do you live? I live in Aurora. And she said,
and so for those that are, Aurora is a little sort of hamlet of Toronto.
Exactly. And there was a close connection to Aurora with her, and that like opened the door. So I was able to pitch CTV in terms of having a social media correspondent. A social media correspondent is different than an influencer. It's leading with the story. We are a part of the story. We are not the lead of the story. It's just like, in a sense, a hybrid of a journalist and a correspondent and a influencer hybrid, shall we say. So I said, I do everything off my phone. I interview people off my phone. It's raw, it's real, and I share it out to the world, and we get people talking. And from that moment on, for 4 incredible years, I was their social media correspondent, working on multitude shows, including Red Carpet with the Oscars, multiple times.
I know. I would be like, Jennifer is down on the red carpet at the Oscars.
Right? You actually messaging me. Yes. And here's the key thing for every lady who's watching. I don't have a background in media. I didn't get media training. I didn't go to school for media, communications, nada.
You showed up.
Serendipitous. Pardon?
Well, you showed up, and you kept showing up. And even if you were worried about this or that, or the hips that are like J-Lo, or the nose that you thought was too European, you had an inner, tell me about that, even though, and then we're going to go to the BS of the beauty world.
Yes.
But tell me about that thing in you that gave you the courage to show up and do it.
I feel it's the self-awareness and all the work that I do on myself. I'm a constant student of spiritual practice. I'm a constant student of improving myself. And so I realized that I had to kind of get out of my own way, out of my shell, and lead with my soul, lead with my spirit, lead with my desire. And I would find the people who resonated with what I could offer. And I knew that I would give 110% because I have such a strong work ethic, thanks to my family and my upbringing. And I would always hear my mother's voice in the back of my head, Jenny, if it's not you, then who? Like, someone has to be picked. And that always stayed with me, that I had a right, just like anyone else, to try.
Yeah, it's incredible. Do you have any great story from the red carpet? I mean, that's what we all like to hear. I know I'm putting you on the spot. It wasn't one of our questions, but like any great story, any learning lesson, great story takeaway.
Oh, that's such a great question. Yes. I mean, I feel that at the beginning, I was incredibly insecure, so insecure. I'd find myself trying to shadow behind my fellow correspondents so that I didn't have to be upfront to ask the questions. And I don't know what was instilled in me, that I finally said, enough. Like, you have to break through this fear. You have to get in front. You have to be strong enough to ask questions. They're human beings at the end of the day. So you have to take all of that away. It's a human to a human conversation. And I remember, like, my most in-depth conversation was at the BAFTAs, which is the British award show in Los Angeles. And Jon Favreau, I think, was the first person I really spent a lot of time with. And he is the most amazing individual. So he does all the Marvel. If anyone doesn't know who he is, he also did Chef, the movie Chef. An incredible human being. Like, he made my first experience of like stepping out of my fear so beautiful. And so did Patricia Arquette. She was absolutely lovely and gracious. Jane Seymour, lovely. I've never had a negative experience on a red carpet with any talent.
We talked though a little bit about the internalized misogyny that went on. And I hope you're comfortable, because I'm just going to ask you the questions and you don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer, because we're empowered women. But tell me about that. You said, we were talking about, let's talk Lisa LaFlamme now. And for those of you that don't know the Lisa LaFlamme story, just let me tell you really quick. Lisa LaFlamme is a Canadian television journalist. And until 2 weeks ago, she was the chief anchor and the senior editor for CTV National News. And she'd worked there for 35 years, blah, blah, blah. She replaced Lloyd Robertson. For those of you who are Canadian, you know all this. He was the chief anchor on CTV. He left at 77 with his really bad, died, God bless him. Lisa is 58 and she replaced Lloyd. She's 58 and she went on to win since 2011. She's won 5 Best News Anchors for the Canadian Screen Awards, most recently in 2021. And in 2022, she won Best Anchor. And then in a 2-minute video, she posted on Twitter, I don't know, last Monday, that she'd been ousted as anchor of CTV National News, one of the country's most watched news shows. And she was shocked and saddened. So that's the Lisa LaFlamme story. And I immediately wrote Jennifer, what do you think, Jennifer? What's going on? So I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but you immediately wrote back, not immediately, but you said something in there like, there's a lot more internalized misogyny going on in that company than the boys.
So I will say that my whole career, when I look at any negatives, has been because of internalized misogyny, more so than my direct experience with a male executive.
Yeah. And yes. And I think, and this is what we've been trying to talk about, but the internalized misogyny is still because of the bigger picture, which is patriarchy, which means it's a man's world. Yes. And there's only a few spots at the boardroom table for the women. Yes. So it creates this very veiled, because we all try to pretend we're all part of the girl club. We're all sisters, but there's this veiled, and I don't know that there's that much internalized misogyny down in the mid-level jobs, but when you start to get up into and you might say, no, there was really in the mid-level jobs.
Oh my eyes.
Yeah, you're like, no, it's everywhere. But what it is, it's this idea that there's this veiled competition because there's not enough room, there's not enough spots, there's not enough opportunities for women. So we're all vying for those few. And really my story, why I started the SWAT Institute, was, yes, I was a published author. Yes, I'd done a couple of books, but my experience in that corporate world, whether it was giving talks on major stages with 5,000-6,000 people, but I was always the token woman. Like there'd be Sir Richard Branson and Bill Clinton, and then they'd bring in Crystal, the token woman, and she's blonde and she's pretty and, wear a nice skirt and wear stilettos, because that probably will look, so I had a different experience, but I made the decision at a certain point. And it's so crazy because I've experienced so much internalized misogyny, but yet I made a decision. I'm only going to work with women, because somehow if I did it in my way, there was room for all of us. It was like, come on in, you're all going to be we're all going to do it. We're going to be okay. But talk to me about your experience and then tell me what you think about the Lisa LaFlamme shakedown.
So similar to you, I had to find my way. I had to find my way through my whole career in terms of this female struggle, where the anger of why you? I would get, why her? Or body shape or ageism, huge. And so it was very interesting, where's all this hate coming from? Because sister, girlfriend, I would love to support you. And I'm a big believer in truly take my hand, let's figure this out and go together.
Yep.
I'm the Jennifer Ettinger show in terms of I keep my head down and I'm far from being perfect. I make major mistakes. I'm human, right? But I'm not out there to be manipulative or hurt someone intentionally.
You're just a good soul. You're an inspired leader.
So I didn't understand where these attacks would come from. But again, Crystal, it all comes back down to, and I know this sounds woo-woo, but it comes back all down to the work that I've done. And at 54 years old, it's so freeing to cut the crap and just say like, that doesn't define me. So you don't like my hips, that I'm curvy? Don't look at them.
It does get easier. You know, I was talking to you about this book before
Yes.
we went on air, and there's a lecture in this book, and I use this book for our Master Empowerment Coach certification. And one of the lectures in here is written by Dr. Christine Smith, and she says, recognizing, I'm just going to quickly read, recognizing the impact of socio-cultural standards of weight and body image is important in efforts to empower women. Furthermore, discussions of eating disorders and body image are incomplete without recognizing why the standards exist and why such pressure is put on women. She talks about the specific messages women receive about weight and body image as symptoms of a larger patriarchal disease, one that seeks to keep women weak. I got to tell you, I'm in my 50s now. And Jennifer, the way you're talking about that you did the work and cut through the crap. Well, me too. But I think that also there, and I don't want to say anything that could be taken out of context or filtered out in a way that I just think though, as we get older, I don't know about you, but I feel almost a sense of like, there's room for all of us. God, I looked good and I didn't even know it. Girl, just enjoy what you've got. Like now I'm more like when I see a young woman that's just, and an older woman that's just working it, I just think, you go girl. Like I have just gotten to the point now where, and I also feel about weight because listen, my first book was a book called Simply Woman, the 12-week body, mind, soul, total transformation. Because you can totally transform. Because that's what we've all been taught. Like we just need to transform.
Yes.
And you know, something has happened as I've gotten older and I started to put on weight, that there is a liberation. And there's a part of me that I want to say to the patriarchy, who are they? That's the old boys club, the old idea, the idea of beauty, the idea of, it's like, you can't make me small enough for you to feel big enough. Yes. So I'm going to stop trying to shrink myself into places I don't fit anymore.
I remember, Crystal, I turned 40 and I was had an incredible fitness sponsor. So fortunate with the
I remember.
And I'll never forget a PR agent saying to me, "You've turned 40." I'm like, "Yes, my counterpoints or counterpoint partner."
Counterparts. Yeah.
Thank you. And they're like, well, "You've turned 40." And I'm like, "Yeah." And shortly thereafter,
better get the Botox.
It was over.
Really?
Yeah. And yes, did my body get softer? Sure. Was I still working out? Yeah, it's part of my lifestyle. But years of doing high intensity interval training, like for 90 minutes, 2 hours a day, those days were gone, right?
Yeah.
Like, and having, you know, my own health issues on top of it with, you know, RA and et cetera, et cetera. They're not excuses, but I almost feel like how sad that even during COVID, I had 2 surgeries. One was on my foot, so I couldn't walk.
Yeah. But Jennifer, we age.
Yes. But I had to, I felt myself having to over explain
why I've gained weight. Why I look, because that's what happens. And there are some women, and listen, I am certainly not saying for that woman that's just born that way.
Yes.
You go, girl.
Yes.
You think you're fabulous.
Yes.
Yeah, you're fabulous. But you know, if your body is changing and aging, it's pretty natural and it's pretty normal. And we still haven't talked about Lisa LaFlamme, but I actually just want to talk very quickly because you were very open about sharing that you did reach a point that you thought, I have to get some Botox if I'm going to compete. I have to get Botox if I'm going to compete in this, because you just said it, you turned 40 and the doors were shut for you. So Lisa LaFlamme at 58, and I know they're all trying to say over there, it isn't about her age and it wasn't the gray hair. But that's the message that we women, that's the optics of it, is we can't age.
Yes.
We can't age. And it's such an important part of our lives to make sure that we keep the weight off, stay slim. And we're told these things like, it'll make you healthier. It's like, wait, well, and I want to go, do you know the unhealthy things that we do to stay thin?
We both know firsthand.
Do you know the unhealthy things women do So don't tell me it's healthier. It's just a lie. It's another lie. And it's another lie that is all designed to keep us smaller.
Yes.
Literally physically smaller. Because then when the man stands beside us, he feels bigger. You know, it's so funny that I'm even going to say this, but you know, my husband, we've been married now 14 years. It was something that I had to, I fell so in love with him, and there was a million things, and I'm about to do the but. So he's 5'10" and he's not a big guy. Do you know the mind game that even played on me to be like, okay, I'm nearly your same height and I weigh more than you. Mm-hmm. Like that's all the stuff that we've been as women to be, you know, that it can, so we got to keep being smaller, or we got to get a bigger guy. That's why we say things like, oh, I love him. He's a big, burly, tall teddy bear, because then I can feel small. That's what that's all about.
Yes, it's exhausting. It's so heavy to carry that on our shoulders day in and day out, that's how we define ourselves. But I appreciate you sharing your truth, because I quite honestly feel we've all been there in some capacity.
All of us.
And with Lisa LaFlamme, like I commend her so much for her speaking her truth on Twitter. Like that took so much courage and power, and it opened up a gateway now for us to have this conversation, the ripple effect on social media that we're seeing in terms of now people having these honest and candid conversations, and even Wendy's jumping on it with the change.
I know Wendy's, the food chain changed Wendy's hair from red to gray to say,
Dove. Yes. Powerhouse.
Lisa LaFlamme is a powerful woman.
Yes.
And quite honestly, her hair turning gray, I would watch her on CTV and go, wow, you look beautiful. Yes. That's so inspiring and liberating. And, you know, and I think she was told things like, but you're not relevant. It's like, how do you need to be more relevant for the news? Like what?
Correct.
But Lloyd Robertson can be 77 with gray hair.
Yes. And it was okay.
And it was perfectly fine.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that she was let go because of the gray hair, or do you think that's just the story that we women want to tell ourselves?
I always feel that there's a public side of things and there's the real side of things.
There's many sides.
Honestly, I honestly gonna say, I don't know. I wasn't there. And I've learned in my career that we take off, we assume on the public end that we think we have all the facts. And I've learned time and time again, there are additional facts, but I hope that she will find a new home, because she is absolutely beyond deserving. Anyone who ever is like so fortunate. And I'm thanking her again for just opening up the gateway for these conversations. And I say, go Lisa LaFlamme.
Lisa, and I always say it like this because this is how she would say it. This is Lisa LaFlamme. So Janet Green says Lisa's story is now aired on CNN. Amazing. Yeah, we've got so many great comments. Alex asks, what's one way for male counterparts to allow for more spaces for women? That's such a great question. And that's really what we're asking for. It's like, don't take what we're saying, guys, personally. When we talk about patriarchy or male fragility, we're not talking about you.
Yes.
Talking about a system, and a system that's been around for 100,000 years. It's just the way it's been. And we're just finally starting to break through. Is there any tip that you would give Alex or any man? And I know that's not necessarily your forte, but how do you think men can help allow for more space for women?
I think one of the easiest, you see the quotes coming up, the easiest way to do that is to share the conversations and be involved in the conversations on social. The more that we are vocal about things that need to evoke change, they can be an impetus to that. So I say, just get vocal and participate and share.
Yeah, I love it. So for example, when I tell a story, let's say, for example, on social media, I will have 100 women that go, yeah, and not one man. So I think a great thing is like, be the guy that says, I stand with you.
Yes.
I stand for you, Lisa. I stand for you, Lisa LaFlamme. I stand for you, Crystal. I stand for you, Jennifer. I stand with you. Yes. And I think that's a big part of it. So, you know, we could keep talking, and I these 30 minutes go faster than like I can even get my head around, but I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. What can we women do to just find that deeper level of self-acceptance and to let go of that internalized story about who we are as women and what we can be in the world.
I think self-work is so important. And I always like to share, be aware of it, don't compare. That might sound easy. It's a struggle, but be aware and don't compare. Put your blinders on, get off of social if it triggers you, and do the work.
Yeah.
Focus on getting your dreams, right? Versus all of this, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane, be aware, and don't compare. Because the minute you start comparing, because even I do it, the minute I go on social and I start swiping, I start thinking, but there's so many incredible people. I think that. Who's going to find me? Who's going to listen to me? Who wants to know me? Who wants to, why? There's so many other people, but don't compare. Just be aware, stay in your lane, work your own magic, and don't compare. Next week, we're talking we have a show. We're talking about hot mess to overnight success. And I've invited Kim Fitzpatrick, who in 4 short years went from a corporate job she hated, just like we've been talking about today. And she decided to step into her own entrepreneurial business. And she now is truly one of the most successful women I know. She is an IG influencer in 4 short years. And she was part of a direct sales marketing company. And it's not about that. It's that in 4 short years, she is 3rd in the entire company of like 450,000 distributors. And she did that as a mom with little kids. She's so funny. She shows up. That's it. It's the proof that if you show up. So she's going to be here next Tuesday to show up with a lot of love and leadership and curiosity, and to inspire you to know that it's never too late to dream and create your best life. So you don't want to miss that. She's just one of the most joyous women I know. Plus, we'd love your help with the best show topics. Maybe we'll even invite you to be a guest expert. You want to head over to http, whatever that is, simplywoman.tv. Join our mailing list. Stay in the loop. It's been my pleasure to connect with you today. Again, my name is Crystal Andrus Morissette. Take care, and I'll see you next week for another episode of simplywoman.tv. Thanks, Jennifer. I love you.
Thank you. Mwah. Thank you, Crystal.
For women, by women, about women, and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.
You are stronger than